6 years swallowed by the desert wind, 6 years of waking to silence and dreams that bled into daylight, of calling into emptiness and waiting for something that should be gone. Then one day, far from the world, a body falls, a flash of stripes in the sun, a roar that should not exist anymore, and eyes that know her like no time has passed, like every second of pain carved into her was carved into him too. Something ancient, something unbroken stirs beneath the blood and dust, and as he collapses and the earth rises to catch him, her name lives on his breath as if it never left at all. Each morning she rose before the sun touched the sand, the kettle whistling in an empty room, the second bowl still by the door, its metal dulled by time, never moved, never filled but never put away, either. She walked the same trail past the same ridge, where once 4 prints had pressed beside hers, her eyes scanning out of habit. Though she no longer admitted what she searched for, the quiet was heavy, not peaceful. The kind of silence that wraps around you like wet cloth memory stitched into motion. She still hummed the tune he used to settle, to still left her coat draped over the same chair he used to curl beside, as if some part of her believed he might return and know where to find her. The world called it healing. She called it surviving, and even that felt generous. Nothing was broken on the outside. Her hands still steady, her gaze still sharp. But the ache was there in the way she paused before sleep, listening to a breath that never came, in the way her fingers brushed over old scars as if they were fresh, in the way her heart beat too loudly, when the wind howled like a growl too far to chase, but too close to ignore. One moment there was breath and weight and the warmth of something real. And the next, there was only sound violence, tearing through silence, like claws, through fabric metal, shrieking smoke, thick enough to taste her voice lost in the chaos, as the cage door swung open, not broken by force but by desperation. He had fled or been taken. She never knew, and that was the worst part. Not the absence, but the not knowing whether he ran free or died. Trying, her hands trembled for weeks after her sleep broken by phantom sounds, by the echo of his rasping breath that never came again. She searched with a madness that stripped her skin and cracked her lips. She followed rumors, shadows, tracks that ended in nothing. She screamed his name into sun and stone until her voice frayed into nothing, and when nothing answered, she fell quiet. Not healed, just hollow days bled into each other, marked only by the rituals she couldn't let go of, the second bowl, the nightly walk, the quiet hum. She couldn't name anymore. People stopped asking. She stopped explaining. They said she had changed. She had grown distant, colder. But really, she had just gone inward, where it was safer, where the memory of him couldn't be stolen, only carried. She didn't cry, not anymore. The grief was no longer sharp. It was sediment, settling deep in her bones, making her heavy, slow, ancient. And though the world moved on around her, she remained still, wrapped in a silence that no time seemed able to break. Let me pause here for a moment. Tell me, where are you listening from? Have you ever had someone, maybe a person, maybe even an animal, remember you after long, silent years? A look, a sound, a moment that said, I know you, despite all that time? If stories like this touch something deep in you, make sure to follow. There's so much more ahead, and it only gets more heartfelt from here. The news came like a tremor under calm water. A voice crackling through the radio, too casual, too ordinary for what it carried. A tiger injured near the southern ridge drove off poachers, then collapsed. No tags, no collar, just teeth and blood and fire and something in the voice. Something in the pause told her what logic refused to accept. It couldn't be him. He was gone years, gone reduced to dust and ache. And yet her body moved before her mind did, reaching for the keys, hands shaking, not from fear, but from the weight of possibility. What if he was alive? What if he had never stopped running? What if he remembered? She told herself not to believe, not to hope, because hope was a cruel thing. Bright at first, and then sharp when it shattered. But somewhere, Beneath the fear was something older than logic, a pull in her chest that said, "Go, not out of chance, but out of knowing." Every mile she drove was filled with doubt, with images too dangerous to imagine the worst. What if he didn't recognize her? What if she had become a stranger in his eyes? Or worse, what if it wasn't him, and this hope was just another cruel mirage? But the thought that it was him, that he had survived, that he had fought, that he had waited, it lit something in her long, dormant, aflame, struggling against the dark, and by the time she reached the edge of the dunes and stepped into the silence, she was no longer the woman who had lost him. She was the one who had come back. She stepped into the light, slowly, as if the world might shatter. If she moved too fast, the air thick with heat and silence and the copper scent of blood, her eyes found him in the dust. Not the myth, not the memory, but the body. Thin ribs rising like waves barely breaking the surface. His fur matted his breath shallow. But those eyes, golden, ancient, alive, they met hers and time slipped sideways. There was no sound, no wind. Only the pulse in her throat and the space between them thick with everything unsaid. He didn't rise, didn't growl, didn't flinch, only watched her as if watching a dream find shape again, and then a flicker. His tail moved once barely more than a thought, but she felt it like a roar. Her knees buckled, and she was beside him. Fingers in his fur voice, breaking on his name, whispered, not spoken, like a prayer, like something sacred. His body trembled under her touch, not from fear, but recognition. He leaned into her, and the moment cracked wide open as his tongue brushed her hand. One slow, deliberate touch, and in it was every mile, every year, every unslept night. Then his head lowered into her lap, heavy, warm, real, and she cradled it like something fragile and eternal. The silence between them was no longer empty, it was whole. It was everything they couldn't say, and everything they didn't have to say, because somehow, even after all the years, all the distance he had remembered, and she had returned, and the bond that had once saved them sparked again. Not loud, not sudden, but certain, undeniable, as breath, as blood, as home. The days passed slowly, marked by breath and bandages by water dripped gently into dry mouths, and the steady rhythm of healing. She cleaned his wounds with hands that remembered every line of his body, every shift of his weight. He winced at first, flinched, not from pain, but memory, and she let him pull away, gave him space and time, but never distance. And then one day, he didn't flinch. He leaned in, let her fingers rest behind his ear, where he used to sleep, pressed close to her heartbeat. At night, he curled beside her again, not for warmth, but for trust. The silence between them changed, no longer aching now, full. He followed her eyes when she read to him. The same old book out loud, just to fill the room. He touched her hand with his nose when she left food nearby, but didn't eat until she smiled. Small things, slow things. She laughed once, quietly surprised at the sound. And he lifted his head, ears twitching. And in that moment, they both remembered what it felt like to be whole. Their walks returned. Not long at first, just beyond the ridge, the wind wrapping around them like something familiar. Their shadows together again stretched across the dunes, not searching, not chasing, only moving as one. And though nothing spoken confirmed it, they both knew what had been lost, had not disappeared, it had waited, grown deeper beneath the weight of absence, now blooming again in every shared breath, every glance, every pause that no longer held pain, but peace. Because some things are not broken by time, they are tempered by it, sharpened, made true. And in the hush between steps and heartbeats, they found it again. The kind of love that doesn't ask for words, only presence, only staying, only returning. Some bonds live beneath the surface, untouched by distance, untouched by silence. They do not fade. They wait patient, as stone soft as breath, until the moment they are needed again. And when they return, they do not ask why or how, they simply arrive. And in that return, everything changes. The ache becomes stillness. The stillness becomes peace. And what was once broken does not need to be made new, only remembered, because love like this does not vanish. It learns to wait, and when it finds its way back, it carries not only memory, but meaning. And sometimes that is enough to begin again.